This is the Khrushchevka, a five-story communist block that shaped the urban landscape during the Soviet era. Upon assuming power in 1953, Khrushchev initiated several political and social reforms. A key focus was the domestic reform, with a determined effort to address the country's housing crisis and provide affordable and adequate shelter for the working class. So in the 1950s, the Soviet Union faced a severe housing shortage, leading to overcrowded and often substandard living conditions for its citizens. The housing crisis was caused by a combination of factors, including a rapidly growing urban population. One of the main reasons for this growth was the massive industrialization and urbanization campaign launched by Stalin in the 1930s to transform the country from an agricultural society to an industrial one. This campaign led to the creation of new industrial centers and the expansion of existing ones, attracting large numbers of people to urban areas. Additionally, the destruction of housing during World War II and lack of investment in new housing construction led to overcrowding and substandard living conditions in urban areas, which further fueled the migration to cities. The housing shortage was addressed through a massive construction effort, with the country building an average of more than 2 million housing units per year since 1957, which helped ease the shortage to some extent. However, the quality of construction and amenities was often sacrificed to expedite the process, leading to the creation of prefabricated buildings known as Khrushchevkas, which were criticized for their low quality and depressing living conditions. So an important milestone of this period was the experimental micro-district of Cheryomusky, built in Moscow in 1957, because it was a testing bed for all micro-districts of mass housing projects built afterwards all over the country. The goal of the project was to see in practice if the implemented designs from landscape to the bathroom shape proved themselves to be convenient for the new tenants, properly embodied the ideals of the time, and most importantly were economically efficient. The size of the micro-district was based on the minimal distance to the most critical services. The schools would often occupy the central place in the heart of the city, not further than 900 meters from houses. Pharmacies, grocery stores, dry cleaners were located in 10-minute walk distance. This principle was established to ensure children's safety of children who did not have to cross major roads on their way to school, and as well as proximity of all necessary services to residential blocks. There was no traffic allowed inside the micro-district. The houses were set back 12 meters from the major road along the side border and protected from the noise and pollution by a row of trees. A landscape in general played an important role in the concept of micro-districts. Firstly, it provided collective outdoor spaces of a true communal society. Repaddling pools still can be found in the micro-district. A courtyard formed by the residential blocks were designed for local residential leisure activities and more active socialization. Flower caches and rails for climbing plants were placed on the external walls under the windows to variegate a little bit the monotonous and rough facades. And such attention to the landscape was rooted in the attempt to compensate for extremely compact areas of the new apartment blocks. The Khrushchevka is the most basic unit of the Soviet housing, and there are many subtypes, but they all share very similar features. And all the Khrushchevkas are 5-story buildings that contain around 40 to 50 tiny flats. They had to be extremely simple and cheap, and their primary objective was to quickly satisfy the dramatic housing need. The Soviet factories worked 24/7, producing millions of square meters of dwellings. And by the end of the 60s, as much as 400 million square meters of apartments was created in the form of Khrushchevkas. One of the major types of residential architecture were the so-called panel buildings. While panel construction started in the Soviet Union at the end of the 40s, it became large-scale only under Khrushchev. Each panel constituted a wall of a room, thus a room with 4 walls was built with the use of 4 panels, where the exterior panel had cutouts for windows and balcony doors, and some of the interior ones had openings for room and main apartment entrance doors. Another building method popular at the time was the block construction. Blocks were an alternative to panels but smaller in size. However, the panel building method was considered superior compared to the block construction techniques used at the time, such as the block and brick construction. Every building had on average 3 to 5 stairwells, where one floor around one stairwell comprised the residential section, which had 1 to 3 room apartments, with a number of apartments in the building ranging between 24 and 80. The furniture and fixture became smaller and lighter and were often designed to serve multiple purposes. And new materials began to be used. The rooms were often multifunctional, so as a result, the use of screens and curtains and other types of partitions or using pieces of furniture as such was encouraged. This allowed to create several zones in one room, for example, one for children and one for parents. The large lampshades and chandeliers were gradually becoming less popular and were being replaced by more compact light fixtures, such as wall sconces and ceiling lights. And it was not uncommon in the late 1950s to see antique tables, bookcases, and cupboards left in dumpsters by their owners who could not utilize them in their new apartments. Designers started to employ tricks to make the new apartments appear more spacious, such as the use of color and light. It was recommended because of low ceiling height that walls should not be visually divided, and no crown moldings or other decorative woodwork should be used. And it was also suggested that wall colors should be solid to visually heighten the ceiling and emphasize the shapes and colors of furniture pieces and items of decor placed against them. The Moscow government has just launched the biggest demolition program in the city's history. Its goal is to get rid of 9,000 five-story residential buildings constructed in the Soviet era. Taking into account the quantitative influence on architecture, these 12 hectares of land were probably the most influential in the history of humanity. They determined the direction of the architectural development of the biggest countries in the world for decades to come.